We all go through moments where life falls apart, where things no longer work and we sense that something new needs to emerge. We may not realize it at the time, but we may be going through an initiation. This is what I studied during my PhD when I went to Latin America to explore how traditional cultures use ritual and music to bring about transformation. Little did I know that this research project would turn into my own initiation, one that ended up being the most powerful, terrifying, and transformative event in my life. Over 7 years, I went through a personal hell where I lived what I was studying. I came face to face with my deepest fears and questioned everything about who I was. My life literally fell apart, and I struggled to piece my life back together again. It was through this personal journey that I learned more about transformation than I could have read in any book. In university, I studied psychology, with dreams of becoming a psychoanalyst. But by the time I finished my degree, my music career was flourishing, and so I continued along that path. Over 20 years, I became a professional percussionist, DJ, and music producer, releasing music globally, touring the world, and partying a lot. Being a musician became my identity. It was what I was known for and what gave my life meaning. Using my drums and my songs, I was able to make people move and feel how music impacts audiences, often in ways that felt eerily spiritual. On one occasion, while playing with my band one night, I felt a sudden surge of energy as the band locked in sync. Suddenly, the energy in the room lifted and a sense of oneness pervaded the space. This brought such joy, confidence, and euphoria that I've never forgotten the experience. At this point, I knew there was more to understand about music, and this is what eventually led me to my PhD. My PhD was about exploring how music creates these type of intense experiences, the ones that change people's lives. So to explore this, I went back to Cuba to revisit a living musical tradition called Santeria. I remember that feeling during my first trip about 10 years before, as the drummers played and the singers sang. A great energy took over the room, and a deep harmony took over the people. A sense of oneness and unity emerged that was visceral. It truly changed me at that moment. I was struck by how these rituals had endured over time, and I wanted to understand how they preserved their ability to create impact. Here was a living tradition with roots dating back centuries. In my personal life, I was also searching for something more meaningful, something that gave my life greater purpose, and so I naturally became interested in the spiritual side of the tradition. As a Latino myself and a percussionist, I resonated with its rhythms, songs, and energetic performances that I'd grown up with. As my research progressed, eventually the elders told me that to really understand it, I would have to step inside the religion. Eventually I was asked to undertake an initiation, not as a researcher, but as a participant. Here I was, having to decide my future path. Something inside me compelled me to do it, despite my nervousness. The night before the ritual, I had a powerful dream. I'm led out into a stadium by ritual elders. Surrounded by onlookers, a huge force came down and overtook my body. I watched and I felt as this powerful force moved through my body, as I experienced two centers of consciousness within one being. On waking, I knew that once I entered the ritual, there was no going back. It's the day of the ritual. I enter the ritual space and instantly I feel like I'm stepping into something I don't fully understand. The priests, altars, strange icons and symbols all await me. First, I'm led through a series of prayers and invocations, each inviting me to let go of old relationships, ties and alliances. I'm being prepared to enter the inner room, where the important rituals take place. Once in the inner room, it all becomes real. I'm introduced to new smells, tastes, and sounds that feel like I've stepped into an alternate world of ancestors. Soon the room is filled with song. Its low, steady tone gradually pulls me into an altered state. I feel like I'm floating out of my body. Each ritual action drives me deeper and deeper into trance, opening me up to new feelings and sensations. The atmosphere is now thick with energy and sound. The room feels alive, saturated with otherworldly presence. Fear of impending death arises in me, and I know there is no going back now. The ritual intensifies, and with each song and prayer, I'm immersed deeper into trance. The ritual is infused with the power of tradition and legacy, so it feels like I've stepped into the past, but I know I'm being prepared for something totally new. The ritual culminates in the final rite, when the energy in the room is most elevated. The songs increase in intensity, and the moment overwhelms me as all my fear rises to the surface. It overtakes my body as I break down in tears, releasing all the tension held throughout the ritual. But this was only the beginning. The first part of the ritual ended, but the experience wasn't over. Something was just beginning. I'm sent away for 3 days of rest and purification. During this time, my mind is filled with strange visions. Thoughts flood my mind, and a great sense of fear arises. My dreams become so vivid that I can't sleep, and dread envelops me. In desperation, I think I'm going mad, and grapple with the idea of losing my mind. I have an out-of-body experience where I find myself looking down at my body from above. I feel a larger presence within me. This brings me great terror as I'm powerless in the face of it. The panic culminates on the 3rd night. I fear that I've lost my mind, and so before I sleep, I write a letter and place it on the bedside table. It reads, "If you find me and I've lost my mind, please call my family," with an attached phone number and address. That night, I toss and turn in my sleep as a battle unfolds inside me. I dream of fights and wars of which I'm eventually victorious. When I awake and realize I haven't lost my mind, a sense of peace comes over me. I feel like I've miraculously made it out alive, and I head for home. But the effects of the ritual aren't over yet. Over the next year, my life literally falls apart. Close friends betray me, my girlfriend leaves me, and my community turns on me. This impacts my health, plunging me into a deep depression as I struggle to finish my PhD in the midst of a life falling apart. Something in me starts pulling me in a different direction, softly at first, and then getting louder. It makes me question my life choices. It feels like my life is being reorganized by something I don't quite understand. Slowly, I come to realize that the life I was living no longer fits. A year later, I return to complete the final stage of ritual. It's a ceremony which uncovers my life path, which is the power that pulls me through this life. During the ritual, I'm asked whether I know the nature of this power. Suddenly, I remember the dream I had before the ritual, where the force descended over me. I realize I already know the answer. I had felt it before. In my dream, in the days after ritual, and now here it was again. This wasn't random. Things started to make sense, then I noticed a pattern. I couldn't fully explain it, but there was a logic in the way the ritual had been unfolding, and I had been living through it. The ritual lasted 5 days, but changed my life over 7 years. It pulled me out of my normal life and began an ordeal that forced me to confront parts of myself. And through that process, something shifted. What no longer fit began to fall away. Fear, attachments, and ways of being that didn't belong anymore. And in its place, something new began to form. a different center of power which came with a new life direction. Slowly, this realization began to crystallize, and that's when I saw clearly that there was a pattern to this. It goes as follows. Tension builds, something breaks, and then something new takes shape. So when I felt like my life was going wrong, actually, something new was trying to take shape. People have described this pattern in ancient stories and myth, but what I hadn't understood until I lived it was what it actually feels like from the inside. I felt it in the ritual, and I lived it in my own life. And then I started to recognize it somewhere else, in music. The same movement, build, release, transformation, was in the music of ritual. And what's different about music is that through it, we feel the pattern, and it changes us in real time. Once I saw it there, I couldn't unsee it. I began to recognize this pattern everywhere, in myths, traditions, music, and in nature, and in the ways people have tried to change and grow over time. Different forms, but using the same underlying pattern. At its core, the pattern is simple. Something builds, something breaks, and something reorganizes. You can hear it clearly in music. First comes a build, then a breakdown, and then a reorganization. Or said another way, first comes tension, then disruption, and then return. Different styles, different forms, but the same underlying movement. And it doesn't just happen in music, it happens in our lives. We notice it when pressure builds over time. You may feel it as tension, loss of identity, loss of direction. And then something breaks. This is where things fall apart. Plans collapse. What used to work stops working. But then, if you stay with it, something begins to reorganize. Something deeper and beyond conscious awareness. That's why we can't recognize it when we were in it. Something new and more aligned wants to emerge. And that's the part of us most misunderstand. The breakdown isn't the problem, it's part of the process. You don't have to go through ritual to experience this pattern. Life will throw you into it. You might recognize it in moments where things stop working, where you feel stuck, burnt out, or unsure of what's next. And in those moments, it can feel like loss. But it might not be. It might be something shifting. Traditional cultures understood this, and they created rituals to guide people through these transitions, to help them move from one stage of life to another. They instilled this knowledge in their myths, traditions, and songs. We don't have those structures in the same way anymore, but the process hasn't gone anywhere. We just don't always recognize it, especially when we're inside it. We forget that what feels like everything going wrong might actually be something trying to reorganize itself, something which wants to emerge.